Awesome. Okay, guys, we're kicking off week 2 of becoming bulletproof. And today we're going to be talking about the second key in building that healthy mindset and becoming mentally bulletproof. And that is learning your language. This for me was the key to everything. So they're all important, but this one overall really nailed it for me. So last week we talked about, I'm going to take this out. And if you guys have questions, just put them in the chat because I can hear myself through here. So it's driving me nuts. I'm just going to put it down. But okay. So, okay, good. You can still hear me, Kristen. I'm going to take that thumbs up that you can hear me. But I will get distracted by hearing myself. I'll put that back in when some questions. Love the technology. Okay, so last week we talked briefly about the 4 A's. Thanks, Elisa. We talked about that the first A in this process was accepting that your perspective on things and that your beliefs are not necessarily 100% true, but a product of all of the influence that we've had in our life that creates the way that we look at things. Basically, the filter or the sunglasses of how we have experienced shows up in how we expect to experience things and kind of what we bring about. So once we accept that, now we have to get some awareness. So that second A is really awareness around that and starting to become aware of the way that we perceive things through kind of that filter or those glasses. And that's where the learning of your language comes in. And it can be done, basically, we have language in different ways. So there's the things that we say in our head. There's the things that we say out loud with our language. There's the way that we feel emotionally, and then there's the way that we feel physically. So that's really checking in. When I say learn your language, that kind of encompasses all of that. Oh, awesome. Hey, Andy's here. Sorry. I'll make sure she gets a chance to get in there. 1 second. Okay. Hey, Andy, thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I needed Stella's help.
That's all right. Got you. Okay. So, like I was saying, we're talking about learning your language, right? So again, it's, what the things that we say inside of our head that aren't out loud, we can talk about self-talk, the words that actually come out of our mouth, the way that we feel emotionally at any given time, and the way that we feel physically. Those are all different areas when I talk about learning your language where it can show up. And so that influence that we have had throughout our life from the time we're born right up until today is what produces the way that we perceive things around us. We create some beliefs, some stories about who we are in the world, how we show up in the world, how we expect the world to show up for us. All of those things kind of come into that, create that story we are, and then it shows up in our language, right? And how we see things on any given day. So when we're learning our language, those are the areas of life we want to think about. And when we do it here at our house, I like to do it in the morning. You can do it all the way throughout the day, but super intentionally in the morning, get a check-in with where you're at. When you first wake up in the morning, how do you feel? Is your first thought, I am so tired? Or are you feeling energized? And just kind of that rolling narrative that kicks off from the get-go in the morning and throughout the day. So it's really important to check in with it somehow in the morning. I've gotten to the space where I love to take time. I've created time to sit down and really sit with it for just a little bit and check in. But I'm kind of down the road a little ways. So a lot of times in the beginning, some people will say, I don't have time for that. I can't do it. I don't have a space to create that. So perhaps you're taking your shower in the morning and you're starting to think about it, right? Or maybe you're doing your workout and you're starting to really pay attention to the things that are going on in there. And then you want to capture them. You want to write it down. Because when it's up here, you're going to continue to believe that it's 100% true. And your unconscious mind is going to go to work trying to continue to prove it. It's going to look for that proof about the way that if you feel exhausted and you're constantly saying, I'm exhausted, it's going to look for proof throughout your day to prove that, see, you're exhausted, you don't have the energy to do things. And when we talked about counting wins last week, that's why it's so important to like, wait a minute, I wasn't so exhausted. I did this. I was able to do this, to start shifting that. But we have such a story, such a narrative. We've got to start discovering what it is, because that it was what is driving our actions on a daily basis, right? That's where it comes from. You know, we have what we will consider self-sabotage or procrastination or whatever, all those kind of negative type things, that is being driven by our beliefs. So I had shared a video that I had done last week. I shared it in the group where it really talked about the whole diet and exercise thing, out about a post that I've seen in all the different types of suggestions where people were giving about different types of ways to lose weight. And the key thing about it is that they most of them will work. But if you have a running narrative or a belief that's kind of hidden under stuff in your mind, that you're not going to be able to lose the weight, that you can't lose weight, that my family is big boned or whatever, then that's where that self-sabotage comes in. You might do wonderful things for 2 days in a workout program or healthy eating, but if your underlying language is saying to you, I'm too busy, I'm too tired, remember this never worked last time, we start doing things that show up and look like self-sabotage. And we think our willpower is not good enough, we're not motivated enough, this doesn't work for me, but you're kind of battling that unconscious part of your brain that's continuing to try and prove the story and the reason why you will never be able to lose that weight. Good morning, Brian. So I really want you to think about that and start kicking in with that. And as I'm talking, is there something that you recognize in your life or an area that you're really struggling with that is an underlying thought? So usually when we have an area that we're really fighting with, or we really don't have enough willpower for, or that's what we think, or we tend to procrastinate about, there's usually something going on unconsciously in our mind driving the reasons we don't do that, right? So if anybody wants to throw anything in the comment section, or if you have something to say, go ahead and drop something in the chat box. I'm happy to have you open up your mic and share on that. But that's at the underlying of what we want to really get used to, checking in the morning with that language. How does my body feel? For me, let me give you an example. I have had my share of migraine headaches that like will take me out for a complete day where I can't hardly move, and I still deal with those sometimes, and I can guarantee you that some of that is language driven. So I'm so grateful that I'm in this space to recognize that and start to work with it that way. If I wake up and start to really like, oh, my first thought, headache, crud. Just the other day, I woke up in the middle of the night, had a really bad headache, got up, took something, slept, and still in the morning, it was horrendous. What would previously have happened, my language would go, oh, here we go again. Now I'm not going to be able to do anything today. I'm laid out. That's it. Nothing. Right. And so that then drives me feeling really upset, really frustrated. Why does this have to keep happening to me? And where I wouldn't even try, like that language would just then perpetuate the feeling of that. Oh my God, I have a headache. Well, guess what? Now I keep continuing to have a headache, right? So the more that it would go on, it would just make a nasty cycle. So the language was that, oh my gosh, I have this horrendous headache. My past experience was that I would be laid out and couldn't do anything for the day, couldn't show up for anything. So that's my thought process. I'm starting to even create that. But since I've gotten used to that, learning to go ahead and release from that a little bit and recognize that it's the language that's going on in my head to do that. Because as soon as I start thinking that, I start tensing up even more creating more of that. So instead, getting up, I'm getting an ice pack, taking some stuff, sleeping on an ice pack for an hour or two, and magically I can go on and have a fantastic day, and it didn't affect me for the rest of the day. So I'm not sure if that makes sense to anyone. I'm going to go ahead and read Kristen's comments, but that's just one example that I really had to deal with for a while, and I've just come a long way in that for me. Let me just check in a couple of the comments here. So Kristen said, for those that are on the replay, Kristen said, my constant thoughts about being confused about my business or not liking what I'm doing paralyzed me from making any forward movement. I also experienced this lately with being exhausted. It's so demotivating. Anybody else able to relate to that? Feel free to pop in the comments and share that. Or if you want to unmute yourself and share, absolutely feel free to do that. Anyone? Before we go on. Hi, my mama. Oh, there you go. Now
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Kristen.
Am I audible?
Everybody else here, Kristen? I can hear.
Okay, so I'll touch on the exhausted part a little bit, just because that's probably extremely relatable for a lot of people. Through the whole quarantine thing, it really disjointed my usual routine, and I was, not getting dressed up as much. I was wearing yoga pants, and then I wasn't maybe washing my hair as much or fixing up my face, etc. So my whole entire routine was disbarred, and then not going to work and not having the gym open. I really lost track of getting my movement in during the day. So that slowed me down and made me feel really sluggish. Then I started feeling really tired, and then I just got really stuck in this pattern of waking up every day feeling so tired. And I physically did feel tired, don't get me wrong. Let's not exempt the fact that we're human beings and that we do experience physical symptoms. However, I was so tired, and I just didn't want to do anything, and just kind of stuck on that repeat story in my brain of I'm so tired, I'm so tired, I'm so tired. And honestly, it was after one of our calls, Amy, where you said, now today you get to pick what story you choose to believe. So I honestly just kind of went throughout my day, did my things, did my work stuff, and then was sitting outside at the end of the day and realized that I was like, oh my gosh, wait, I'm supposed to be tired. Because I wasn't tired anymore. And it was so crazy when I stopped fixating on how tired I was, how tired I wasn't.
That's beautiful. That was a really good, that's like a quote. When I stopped fixating on how tired I was, I realized how tired I wasn't.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like, who's the guy that wrote Alice in Wonderland? Lewis Carroll?
Yeah.
So,
Lisa, I love that. Lisa's saying, I love that. Yeah, that's so perfect, Kristen. Thank you for sharing that, because it is so important. Because once you identify what that language is, then you can get it out and put it on paper. You can take a second, do I want to continue choosing that language? Or am I going to choose something else? Like you said, Kristen, it doesn't mean that you don't feel tired. But if you keep telling yourself, I'm so tired, well, hello, right? That's exactly what we get. Oh my gosh, I really am tired. That just cements that language and that whole cycle for sure. And Andy shared something on here I want to, in the chat box, that's so powerful too. Number of tasks get overwhelming and too much to do. Woo, raise your hand if that's ever been you. Right? Where you have so many things to do. Yep, Elisa's preach, right? Where you have so many things to do that you're just completely paralyzed and do nothing. I think probably 98% of us can probably put ourselves in that category at some place or time. And then what goes along with that is our language starts to become, I have so much to do. And then how am I ever going to get it all done? And then our brain starts going crazy trying to figure it out instead of doing something. Absolutely, 100%. And I have been in that space a lot lately. Hello, pageant land, those of you trying to get some of those things done for sure. What I do for that too is catching my self in that position where like I'm almost feeling like I'm a chicken running around with my head cut off. Like that's what I feel like. And I'm like, okay, let's stop a second. The figure it out becomes a hamster wheel of stuck and doing nothing. Exactly, Kristen. So for me, I like stop what I'm doing, and which seems counterproductive. You know, I don't have time to stop and do journal right now. That's what I would have thought before. I literally stop, sit down with my journal and write down the language that's coming through. Like I literally write down, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. There's no way I'm ever going to get all of this stuff done. What was I thinking? Why do I keep taking on more stuff? What no human person can possibly, you know, that's what the language can start to look like. But once you get it on paper, it's almost laughable because you're like, oh, I do look like a chicken with my head cut off, you know, and then a quick dump of like, really, what do I have to do? Like, what's the important stuff? What are the things that are so important? And it allows you to look at them realistically. Okay, how about I take like, what's for sure important? Like there's probably 10 things we're worried about that are really not that important at the moment. Like what's your super intentions? Take those one at a time. And it's so empowering and takes you out of that. Kristen, were you going to say something? Oh, okay. I thought you had unmuted. Does anyone else have anything to say around that? I so appreciate you guys sharing those examples because anyone on the replay, that can be so powerful. Practicing getting the language out. I'm going to take this back out until we need it. So I'm not hearing that in my head. So in the beginning, and I laugh because I've been trying to incorporate this with my daughters for some time. And the oldest is not a fan of journaling most of the time. So I'm like, let's write down stuff in the morning. I don't want to write. I don't know what to write. I hate writing. So if any one of you finds yourself thinking that, come back later. Come back.
We're talking about
I am talking about you. Close the door. Sorry. So if any of you find yourself in that, but I don't know what to write, like what am I supposed to journal? If you've ever sat down and tried to start journaling and have no idea what to write, I'd start with just writing what you're feeling or what you're thinking. Even if you're writing down, like, here I am with my journal, don't know what to say, have nothing to say, I'm not really sure what I'm talking about, what's going on here. That's okay. You've got to start somewhere. And it's just like anything, walk, crawl, run, or crawl, walk, run, excuse me, right? We have to practice. We have to learn. It's not something that's innate. And there's really no wrong way to do it. It's just important that you start doing it because awareness kind of happens in steps. You know, you have to open the gates to it at first. You start being silent for a couple minutes, that your brain starts allowing itself to be a little reflective on what you're really thinking instead of just go, go, go. And when you start getting it on paper, you can decide what is actually important to you or what's true for you compared to what you've created based on that influence around you. And then once you get it out, you get to choose, like, wow, is this something I want to choose for myself? Overwhelm and feeling like I'm never going to get it all done? Or what's something that would make me bulletproof, that, oh, I have the choice that these 5 things are important to me, or I have the choice to decide what I'm going to do. I should have locked the door.
I'll lock it once I go.
Anyways, that we get to choose, right? Once we get it out, that is the power in this, is realizing what's been giving you the issues from the get-go. So many times we set goals, and so in the diet and exercise realm, for instance, in the diet and exercise realm, what we think we need to do all the things. What do I have to do to lose weight? I got to eat this way. I got to exercise this way. I got to do the exact exercises. I got to count my macros. I got to do keto. I got to do low carb. I got to do no sugar, like all of that stuff, right? Talk about overwhelming. When in reality, what you really need to do is address the root cause of why you're not already losing the weight, right? What up here is the story or the narrative that is causing you, is the direct relation to the actions and behaviors that are keeping you going. Mindset first. It is big, Kristen. Yeah. I'll read that for anyone who's not on. Yeah, mindset first. Align your actions with your health inspiration statement. So big. Yeah. And we'll touch, and I'm going to just, we haven't talked anything about inspiration statements thus far in this, but to keep it simple, it's kind of like a goal, but it's so much more than that. Something that really aligns with your soul and makes you feel fired up, as opposed to, and I'm going to keep it again in the diet and exercise realm for now, but feel free to, let's bring any other examples in, but that's so common for people, right? It's like, I got to lose 15 pounds. You know, that's a lovely goal. I got to lose 15 pounds by, you know, July 31st can be so here. And that feels like, to me, that feels like almost torturous, right? So it's like, I got to do this. Like, I got to eat right. Oh my gosh, I can't eat this. Instead of some kind of statement about how amazing you'll feel. It doesn't mean that you can't want, that it's not okay to want to take weight off, but let's really feel something that feels inspiring to look at and want to do it because we love ourselves, not because we have to get away from where we're at, if that makes sense at all. Let me quick check this. Kristen, I finally lost weight when I stopped focusing on the weight and just started aligning actions with your thoughts. Treat my body well. Yeah, so that's, you know, and that's a beautiful thing. If you were thinking every day about treating my body well, wow, you know, and it can be different for anybody, whatever you want to call it. But if your thought in the morning is treat my body well, what kind of actions will do that, as opposed to I have to lose this 15 pounds by such and such date? Does that make sense? Anybody else have any comments on that? That's just something to really think about, especially when you're setting goals. But what about the language that happens? Let's look at self-sabotage really in depth on that just a little bit. If you're thinking, I have to lose 15 pounds, let's say you have a bad day. Maybe you have, you know, you have a short time frame that set in your head in this goal, you've got to lose this weight, and then you have a day for whatever reason that you don't work out. Maybe you get sick, right? And maybe you have 3 days that you don't work out, and then your brain starts to get a panic around, well, now I'm never going to reach that goal. It's already beating itself up in failure, and it's saying, see, I told you, you're not going to lose the weight this time. And it just perpetuates this whole big circle. And now we're unconsciously saying all these nasty things to ourselves, and in a panic about doing the things, and then about exercising, then maybe you over exercise, and then maybe you starve yourself. And I'm not suggesting anyone on this call does that, but that's an example of what happens, right? Instead of thinking long day, all the things all day long. Lisa, that's great. Yeah, let me look. Treat my body well. Bad day equals binge eating all the things, right? All the things all day long. And that happens, right? So if we're really in tune with our language, and we do have a day where where we do something like that, where we do eat the ice cream for supper, or we do eat all the things because we're stressed or whatever reason, so many times then we go into this phase of beating ourselves up, and the language is very much, can be very negative, and a lot of self-hatred, and a lot of like, well, you're never going to get there now anyway, so you might as well just eat all the things all day long, another day and another day and another day, instead of giving yourself some grace and being able to be like, woo, well, that was fun. And changing that language to something else that's loving, like, that was one day. Okay, tomorrow's a new day. How do I treat myself, treat my body well today? Or whatever words inspire you to where you want to be long term. It's okay to have a goal to lose pounds, or to change your body, or any other thing in your life. But what is the language that you have around it is so important, because that's what's going to be driving the behavior. And until we start checking in with it, like really checking in with it, we're not going to find it. Okay. triggers are biggies for me too, Elisa. Oh yeah, if you want to expound on that, Elisa, please feel free, as far as triggers for you. But yes, that is huge, guys. And drop something in the chat if that makes sense to you, or if you have any questions on that, because again, you guys are here live. I'd love to answer anything if something is unclear around that, or if you have a question in reference to it. I gladly expound on that now for anybody who will be catching the replay later.
Yeah. Well, for me, sorry,
No,
I'm
go.
talking.
No, go. You're good, Elisa. I'm waiting.
Okay. Um, over the last, we'll say, month and a half, what's been a trigger for me is just my family and my schedule. Not to say that, externally, like I can still choose how I respond, but my husband's work schedule is shifting all over the place, and we're only using one vehicle. So sometimes it would mean that, okay, yes, we get to sleep in, and then I drive you to work and then come back, make sure the kids are doing all their schoolwork, and then dinner, etc. Try to get a nap in and then go back and pick him up. Or his shift would be super early, and then his alarm would be going off way before I would naturally wake up. He likes to ramble through all the things. I wasn't getting the rest that I needed. It was loud. It was waking everybody up, and then he was out the door. So it was kind of all over the place with that. So my sleep was thrown off, and so when I don't sleep, then that produces for me a physical trigger. And then I don't feel that I have as much energy. I noticed that it wasn't just me trying to say I was tired, or our youngest trying to tell me that I was tired all day long. Oh, you look tired. You should take a nap. Like he's trying to get in his video gaming time, right? So, but I was actually physically tired because when I would do my workouts and stuff, my recovery sucked. Like it was super painful. And so that's how I knew I wasn't getting enough sleep to have had the rest and recovery that I need so that I can have the exercise that I want.
Yeah.
Then that became its own vicious cycle.
Yeah, that is powerful. Thank you for sharing that, because I think the example is so good. And Kristen's in the chat too, the changes and inconsistencies in schedule, huge. For sure with the, quarantine type stuff, so many people having things so different, and then us to a schedule. I have gone through the same with that. We are doing a lot of traveling, we're staying in different places. Just when you get the routine, it changes. And then I think this is where the learning your language is so powerful, right? Like you said, you recognize maybe it has to change, right? You need to do something else to get more sleep, to change that, and recognizing that so that your language doesn't turn in to something that doesn't serve that, right? We try to force it. We try to force the old schedule, try to force the way I got to keep doing my workouts this way. That is huge, 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 huge. So I'm glad that you shared that, because all of us have things that change and come up, and it's important to listen to your body and listen to how it's feeling when you do recognize, oh, this is that I need more recovery. Today I need a shorter workout. Today I'm going to change what I did, or I need to eat more, or different things like that, or the sleep, right? Sometimes we chastise ourselves for needing more sleep when really there's so much power in actually getting that. I'm just checking the comments for anything. Workouts falling off the map and experiencing any underlying resentment. Woo! Girl, Kristen, that was good. That was a question that Kristen had. Oh, for sure. When my husband used to be up at 3:30 in the morning, all the time too. I'm like, do you have to make all the noise and turn on all the lights and all the things, and then you get irritated and go back to sleep with that? Sure. Oh, this is beautiful. So Kristen asked in the chat, for those of you that are on the replay, I want to make sure and share this. Kristen had asked about how do you shift yourself and adapt with that and not being resentful about that. And Elise is talking about using inspiration statements, and this is a good example, or using things to support what you want to, want the new story that you want it to be, or what you want your brain to start looking along, what you want to choose. And his working supports us all, just get the kids to the end of the school year, different things. So instead of getting caught in it, so powerful. I cannot stress enough how powerful it is when you start keying into that language, and then you can change it. So I'm gonna caveat on this a little bit, because how many of you have been taught to use affirmations? Just say this thing like 100 times, or say this thing 10 times a day. Every morning, say these things like, I am beautiful, I am beautiful, I am beautiful, whatever it might be, right? That's, we're given, just say these things and everything's going to shift in your brain. But it doesn't work that way. Your brain scientifically doesn't work that way. If it doesn't address the core language that you have. Okay, Kristen's got her hand raised. I'm going to say, come on and say it, girl. Let me.
Okay, so I have to share something that kind of goes along with this, because in my women's leadership class that I took through the North Dakota Women's Business, oh shoot, this is being recorded. I shouldn't have put that out loud.
Don't share that outside. You're not meaning to bash. We know. It's a.
Yeah, I'm not meaning to bash. I'm just saying, like, how the different perspectives on things that we're taught they're so different. Okay, so that was one of the things, or the tools that they gave us, was using I am statements.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is powerful to step into a different pair of shoes when you maybe are feeling a little, less capable or less confident in yourself in something. So but the project was to write out 100 I am statements about myself. Okay. Which, I used it as an opportunity to use my imagination, and I was envisioning myself in a space of I actually am capable, I am confident. However, the greater public doesn't have the luxury of sitting here learning about the underlying unconscious things. So if I'm sitting here buried with tons of unconscious narrative that's telling me that I'm stupid, I'm dumb, or I'm not capable of leading, or I'm not capable of something, me putting the Band-Aid on of I am capable is only going to fall off. And then guess what happens? The underlying unconscious narrative of I'm not capable still exists.
Yeah.
So if we're only being taught to Band-Aid the narrative, it's not going to work.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. It doesn't.
For real. Yeah. And so here I am. And so, and Amy, this was last summer. So here I am, we've been working together probably at least a year and a half or 2 years or whatever. I don't know what it's been. Something. And I'm just this doesn't work. This isn't going to give people sustainable change. It's
right.
This is what we really need to get hungry for. And I'm sorry I popped up on my soapbox for you, but it's we really need to get hungry to change the shit that's deep down embedded inside, to recreate, to uncreate what's been created, and really just be who we are supposed to be, and just really be truly confident in who we are, not and truly knowing that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that there's nobody else like me, there's nobody else like you are the only Amy Sue Haas on the face of the planet. What a gift.
This one. That's right. Right? It is. And no, I'm glad you stepped on your soapbox. I truly am, because it makes my heart swell when other people get it, because it takes a while, because I was a coach years ago that was taught to teach affirmations. And then you can't figure out why, like, you're still dealing with stuff and that the behaviors are not lining up with that. And what happens, like you said, it's a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. And I use this a lot of times with my clients. It's like, yeah, the language, the celebratory language. It was beautiful, wasn't it, Elisa? Elisa's done that for this. It really was. And it sounds exactly like the video Ashley was doing yesterday. It's beautiful, right? Being confident in that. But yeah, if we do not deconstruct the underlying language, it never changes. So if you're saying something like, I am beautiful, but your unconscious narrative is still stuck in like, how can you think you're beautiful, and starts picking out all of its perceived flaws based on influence. It's like every time you're like, I'm beautiful, it's yelling bullshit in the background. And like, it's, all you do is feel ishy. Like Ashley always says, that makes me feel cringy. Like your body is like physically cringing.
Exactly. And like, let's not bypass the fact that when you're facing this narrative, it's sometimes ugly. Is it always ugly? No, not at all. Some of our internal narrative is super awesome. When we're working through some of these deeper, it's scary and it's disgusting, and it's ugly, and it makes us cringe, and it makes us want to roll up in a ball, and it makes us want to run off the other direction. But if we don't face it, we don't fix it. We don't shift from it.
Right. It's so true. Yeah. Elisa.
There was a quote once. I'll throw this quote out there and then I'll mute myself again. But I've had it on my Facebook for a long time, and I truly believe in this one. It says the monsters don't live under your bed; they live inside your head. Right.
It's true, unfortunately. But yeah, mic drop. Exactly. And that's why I get excited about teaching this, because because once you get the monsters out, so to speak, out of your head, just like out from under the bed, oh, that's just a stuffed animal. Like, it has no power once you get it out of your head. Once you get it on paper, you're like, oh, like that is so not true. And then we work on, here's the reasons why that's not true, right? So the key is uncovering it. So for anyone who dives into this, and you're ready to do that, as you scratch the surface and get a little deeper, it does tend to get sometimes uglier. And that's okay, right? And that's okay. Recognize that, don't edit it, because your tendency will be to like to cover it back up. Like, I don't think that, that's too foul. That's too mean. That's too whatever. But understand that it's just a product of your influence, that it's not really what you believe as a logical, smart human being. It's something that you've had just sucked up. Our unconscious brain is like this sponge that's a 2-year-old toddler just taking everything in, and it really does not know what's real or what's not real. So it just like, oh, it will take in everything and just take it as complete truth. And so that's what builds that story for you. It's not you. You're smart enough to know better, but you don't, unless you uncover it, you don't know that it's driving your behavior. So once you get it out, then we start to deal with it. So it's so powerful. And you can see, like, I love that Elisa and Kristen are popping in so much. It's because they've been doing it for a while. It didn't happen right away. They know already not facing the negative narrative can be harmful, right? And that was me for years. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. As soon as something issue came up years ago, I was like, what? Or it's like, you're so positive. You're so happy. Yeah, because I never fail anything. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. But you never deal with it. It still drives your behaviors. So yeah. Who has questions on learning your language? This is what we're going to be doing. If anyone does have a question on it, what I want you to do is have your notebook, take some time in the morning, and every morning start writing it out. You don't have to do any certain amount of time. If you are new to this, just try and get it out. You don't have to have any feelings around it. You don't have to share it. You can share it if you want, but sometimes it can be a little startling at first that you might not even want to share it with anyone. Feel free to private message it to me if you want to, if you just want some feedback, or if you're feeling unsettled about it or struggling with it, feel free to do that. But I want you to start writing it out. And then we talk about what to do with it. But you have to just get it out and be like, oh, that's interesting. Like, don't take it as something, don't let yourself get offended by it. Don't let yourself feel bad about it. Take it as like, oh, that's an interesting storybook my unconscious has been writing. Like, wow, that's really interesting. Don't internalize it. And Elisa says, it's okay to feel uncomfortable. Yes. Thank goodness for counting wins for balance. Boom. There's another one. That's why I still like to start with counting wins as the first thing. You're already practicing that. So writing out any language is so powerful that you can count wins. Once you do it, writing out the language is counting a win. That's a huge win. Like, I recognize some interesting language. Kristen, Scott, in the chat box, it's like you're watching a movie. Yeah, the narrative is a storyline. That's exactly true. That's the one other takeaway. Yeah, movie script per se, that I don't want you to internalize it. As you write the language, if you start to find something that feels really foul, it feels like, what's wrong with me? Like, even as I say this, you may think, oh yeah, but mine is way worse than any. I've seen and found it all, even in myself. So just think of it, like you said, Kristen, I like that, as a movie script, right? And understand that it's just a product of what we've kind of sucked in over the years. You can't internalize that. And it's like, oh, let's take the movie script thing, like, oh, that's an interesting movie script. Yeah, I don't like that one though. That's not really true, because we could rewrite this line. Now that's a process. For right now, it's just getting it out there and seeing what it is. But sometimes you're going to have an aha moment. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. No wonder I keep doing that. You're like, oh, and the more you start to write, you'll recognize a pattern. You'll be like, oh, and your mind just starts to change it. If you're counting your wins and you're doing your language, and then as we incorporate the other keys, I promise you, if you stay consistent with it as you're writing your language, and if it's non-serving and you keep writing, it just starts to change itself. That probably won't happen this week, but keep working. It works, I promise, Kristen says. Exactly, right? Because sometimes as you start writing the language, you're like, yeah, but that's not going to work for me because this sounds so crazy. But we guarantee, if you do it, if you do the keys, if you practice the keys, it will start to just change itself, because that's what we're doing, is training your brain to do that. And we're retraining it to do that automatically. Okay, any other questions? I don't have any idea what time it is. Let's see, 10:46. Yeah, I know it's a Sunday morning and lots going on. So, oh yes, it's 10:46. Okay, so questions, anyone? I don't know if I want to make sure we cover for anyone else who's catching the replay, but I don't want to keep you guys unnecessarily either. So what's your homework? And if you don't like homework, and if you see, oh look, Melissa's here. Melissa, we're just getting ready to wrap. Oh, you probably can't hear me yet. We're just getting ready to wrap up, my dear. So if you have anything to add, hold on. So any questions that anybody wants to share here, I would love to answer them. But for everyone in the group, I want you writing down your language this week, and then you're going to count it as a win that you wrote it down, no matter what it looks like. Maybe it's serving, maybe it's non-serving. Like, is it serving? Is it something that's going to help move you forward? Or is it something that you want to change? Either way, you get to choose. But the point this week is starting to recognize what it is. That's the big key. So that's our assignment. We'll be doing it together. I'm going to be in the group sharing some of my language. Most of it's better by now. It does have its days. But we're going to get in the group and we'll be doing some examples. I will have my daughters do some of theirs, and anybody who wants to share theirs in the comments, those of you who've been doing this for a while, when we do the feed, please feel free to share yours if you're comfortable with it. You don't have to, but most of us who've been doing it for a while are a little more comfortable letting it hang out there. Yes, thank you, Melissa. She's been doing it a while too, and coaches on this. Paying attention to your language is a game changer. And that's the point we want to get across to anybody who's just starting this, especially, is that it may not feel like it right now, but just trust us and do it. So, yeah, Melissa, did you want to say something on that?
Well, I just thought that I would share like this. I had
Yeah.
a really tough conversation last night with one of my friends,
Mhm.
and it was such a great conversation. It was tough, but we were able to really kind of close the loop and really hear each other. But this morning, my language was all around, and like we had given hugs, said goodnight, said we were good. This morning, my language was around, I don't want to get up, I don't want to hang out, I don't want to do any of these things, kind of like we hadn't moved forward, right? And that could have been a total bummer on my day. Like I could have thrown the whole day away, just kind of staying in that stuck place, even though I knew that we had moved forward. And so paying attention to that language and then checking it, right? Like against positive proof, against what is reality, what's going on, right? Because what was probably going on with my language this morning was that I was tired and feeling a little bit more kind of, rather than anything that had to do with hanging out with my friends or having a great day at the lake. So, so yeah, and it's turned around and we're good now. So if we pay attention to it, we can re-script it a bit. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I love you sharing that too, because it speaks a little bit to the triggers that Lisa mentioned earlier too, the little things, like you said, like Melissa said, it probably had something to do with, I was pretty tired, right? If we don't eat well, if we're more tired, those things absolutely shift. So in that physical, checking what the narrative and how that sounds is so important, because so many times when we wake up, we feel a certain way and we automatically take that for granted instead of being like, what is driving this? What's the narrative that's driving this? So I love that you shared that. It is an awesome win, right? Because it's the same thing. Once you've been doing this for a while and you realize, it's like the wins are like, yeah, this could have been taking me out for the whole day. And now it's just a few minutes. That's so true. Yeah. It's the power. And yes, it was an awesome win. And that, my friends, is something that you would count as a win. Like, wow, I recognize that I so could have.
Yeah, I so could have thrown the day away. So.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I think every single one of us can totally relate to that. And so it's so powerful when you think of the time that could have gone a different way. So thank you for sharing that for sure. Anyone else? I so appreciate you guys being on this call today because it's so powerful for everyone tuning in that's new to this, because it absolutely works. And for people who haven't experienced before what this can be, it can be super scary. Yeah, you're welcome, Andy. I'm so glad you were here. Yeah, so I can't wait for people to catch the replay of this. And I think if I can make it work and it works for most of you guys, we might try and do Sunday calls the next 2 weeks. I usually try to stay away from weekends, but this was just such a great sharing call. I so appreciate you guys. Oh my gosh. So any closing comments before I end this and get it uploaded? Thank you, Melissa. Okay, going once. Oh, go ahead. Yes, shoot, Lisa. Yeah.
And just going back to my comment above all this stuff is just, even the non-serving language, it's plot thickening. It's like adding cornstarch to gravy. But it keeps it interesting, right? It's like drama. You get a good, but that it can end well. So know that the story doesn't have to stay that way, that it can evolve and that it can end well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's so funny. I love that. But it's right. Once you start doing it, even when you're in the midst of like, ugh, you're like, but oh yeah, I totally know that I know how to walk through this. Because that's one other thing I love about this is that these are tools for a lifetime. Once you know how to use them, you can walk through anything, absolutely absolutely anything, just using this, because you practice and you practice and you know how to do it. So I love that it's plot thickening. It is, and there's so much growth, and so much positivity that comes from this, like a real sense of positivity. So I love that plot thickening. Absolutely, absolutely. And you know it's going to end well, no matter what. It's not permanent, temporary moments in your journey. Yes. Boom, boom. Whoops, I bumped the wrong button there. Absolutely. So temporary, that's a great reminder. That's a great thing to remind yourself in the midst of the journaling. So last call, anyone. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to get this up so everyone can check it out, and thanks for your participation. You guys are amazing. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye guys.